Walter Duncan. And Walt has been doing this for 20 years. He is uh, uh, all about payroll podcast presenter. He is a terrific personality and someone with a lot of experience on payroll and HR in general. And we're lucky to have him. And he is going to be teaching a course for us for his payroll certification. And that is coming up pretty soon. It's coming up in about 3 weeks. And if you guys want to come to the payroll access, we will give you a coupon code called Professional 20 for 20% off. And today we're going to be discussing earned wage access, which is no doubt part of that. And so this will give you a taste of some of the skill and the and how great Walt is. So with that said, no pressure, Walt. Take it away.
Thank you, Blake, for that setup. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session. Glad that you're here and glad to be a part of this with career learning. So let's get right into it. So, what is earned wage access? It is, by definition, some people call it EWA as well. So it allows employees to access a portion of their earned wages before their traditional payday. So what does that mean? That means if my pay date, my pay period ended last Friday and I get paid this Friday on the 6th, then that I would be able to access my funds earlier the days that I worked for. And we'll talk about limits and stuff like that that companies put in place for this and everything. The purpose of this is to help employees manage their cash flow and avoid taking any potentially high interest loans like payday advances, payday loans. This is a little bit different. So some of these don't have as high interest when it comes to fees. That's why some people like EWA, right? So this also known as on demand pay or daily pay as well. Right. So why EWA matters? A traditional pay cycle for 43% of employees, they use a biweekly cycle in 2023, right? So, and that may not align to every employee's financial needs. And I know a lot of people get paid semi-monthly, which is, could be the 15th and last day or two specific dates that the employer chose and that may not align to the employee's needs either, right? So I know with semi-monthly, it could be you could wait a longer couple of days because each period could be different, right? So there's some pay periods that have 10 days, 11 days, and as many as 12 days in that pay period. So one of these other things that EWA is important for is because of financial stress, right? So a lot of workers face liquidity challenges between paychecks. Basically, they live paycheck to paycheck, right? It's hard for them to make those ends meet. And so there's a survey out there that says that almost 70% of US based employees live paycheck to paycheck, right? So I know for that includes some employees that earn lower six figures, right? That say that they live from paycheck to paycheck as well. So what are some of the benefits of EWA or earned wage access for the employees? It could reduce reliance on payday loans, right? It may improve financial stability, and potentially may enhance mental health or mental well-being, right? So happy employee, a happy employee shows up to work, they're probably more amped and ready to do the job versus someone who is distracted by, maybe something that's going on in life and it impacts their work, right? So that's what this is saying. For employers, it may increase that employee retention. It also may boost productivity, as I spoke to a little bit earlier. And it could potentially position the company as employee centric or, something that a company that is very employee friendly, right? And that may want to make a lot of people come work there or stay there, even if they don't have, all the benefits and the pay that some other companies may offer. A company offering earned wage access may help improve their productivity and employee retention. Market growth. So the global EWA market was valued at approximately $22.5 billion. That's a lot of money, right? And that was in 2022. It's projected to reach 26, $27 billion by 2030. So it's a growing industry, right? So that's almost another 4 or 5 billion dollars that the industry has been projected to
Mhm.
be valued at by 2030. So here are some of the companies that have adopted um, EWA, right? So McDonald's, Target, Hilton, Walmart, Amazon. A lot of these we are familiar with and probably use on a weekly, maybe sometimes daily basis for those of you who like to shop, or whatever. And for those of you that may like McDonald's. Um, and look, Amazon, according to the slide here, they allow their employees to access up to 75% of their earned pay before payday. Every company is different. I know as a baseline, most companies do 50%. So if I work the full pay period, I can access, let's say that is 80 hours in that pay period, then I can access up to 40 hours of my earned time that I've already worked, right? And most companies just leave it as that. And so when the payday rolls around, if say I use this service and I am looking to get paid, I'm only going to get paid what I didn't um, access earlier, right? So if I accessed 32 hours out of potential 80 hours that I may have worked, I'm only going to receive 48 hours on my traditional payday. So that's something to think about when it comes to earned wage access. So the regulatory landscape. So federal oversight has been a topic of discussion. There are ongoing discussions there. Uh, there's talks about classifying UA or earned wage access under the Truth in Lending Act, which means that they would potentially classify these things as payday loans or advances, right? So that may impact it in a different way. So uh, I guess the government wants to definitely make sure that it's being regulated properly. Uncle Sam wants to get in there and make sure that these things are, taken care of and, put in their 2 cents, right? And so that's from a federal standpoint. From a state oversight standpoint, it could vary, right? Every state is different. Each state may want to bring up its own rules, and some states may copy or, do something similar to another state. An example here, Arkansas requires that EWA or earned wage access providers offer at least one no cost option and prohibits fee sharing with employers. And Utah mandates annual registration and transparent fee disclosures for EWA providers. So they're trying to make sure that there's nothing funky going on, that everybody who uses in those 2 states that they are understanding exactly what they're getting, right? They don't want anybody to be caught off guard and saying, well, I didn't realize that I was going to get charged 10% if I use this, or I was going to get charged 1%, because each provider may vary, right? There are several EWA providers out there. I'll share it at the end of the session in the chat,
Mhm.
but there are several providers out there that employees or employers could use. And I like that the fact that Arkansas is mandated that there's a no cost option to employees, right? And prohibits fee sharing with employers. So that means that the employer is not getting money from the employee, and that the employee is not really being impacted at all, right? They're accessing their funds a little earlier, and they don't have to pay a fee potentially because they're that no cost option. Next slide. Now, there are some potential challenges, right, to consider. So some EWA service providers have some really high fees. So it depends. I think I've seen one like with a, you know, and you want to fact check this for yourself, right? And go do your research for yourself. But I remember one being out there, and I think it was like 25%. I've seen the fees as high as those, depending on the person's bank or whatever they use. Excuse me. And there's a potential for employees to become dependent on EWA. So a lot of people in the payroll industry, even in HR industry and the financial industry, are a little concerned about that, right? Because it's similar to payday loans. And, unfortunately, some people have become reliant or dependent on payday loans. And so they are scared that EWA is going to fall right under the same bracket and that people are going to become more dependent on it. And that's going to how they're going to structure their budget and how they um, monitor and manage their bills, right? So there's a lot of things that are worrisome about that. Um, and there is some lack of transparency when it comes to fee structures, right? Which is why in that last slide, on a federal and state level, they want to make sure that the oversight is that the employers and the EWA service providers are being forthright when it comes to those things, right? Because of the lack of transparency. And again, if somebody goes in and you access, 50% of your funds, and then you have to pay 25% or even 10% of what you get. So let's say you earn $400 in 1 week, right? And you have to pay 10% of that. That's $40, right? That $40 could make or break someone. That could be food for them, their family, their loved ones, gas, whatever it could be, and it could be detrimental to the people, right? There's a case study in the slide that you can check out. I think it's very informational, and I think you will definitely find some good points in there about these topics. So what are some best practices for implementation? You want to make sure you choose a reputable EWA earned wage access provider that is very transparent with their fee structures, right? Um, Again, going back to the last slide, because of the lack in fee structures and because of the lack of oversight that some of these states and on a federal level may be in place, you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence when it comes to your research and make sure that you pick something that's best for the employees and the employer, because there may be some impact for the employer as well, because some services may charge the employer. There are services that do not charge the employer or the employee at all, but you have to do your research on that.
Right.
Definitely want to educate employees about using the service responsibly, right? Because if you have a habit and you start, next thing you know, you're demanding your funds ahead of time, it may throw off something else. And the next thing you know, you're getting to your next payday and you're behind and you're not able to take another one because you've used all of the 50% limit that your company put in place. Then you may be in a little trouble, right? So they want to make sure that you don't have a codependency or dependency on those things when it comes to EWA. You want to definitely monitor usage patterns to prevent that dependency that I just spoke of, right? So there are reports that should be available to you, and that's another thing you should think about when just trying to decide which service provider you're going to go with, to make sure that they have reporting on it and that is transparent reporting, right? So you can see how frequently it's being used, by who, and if there's any downstream impact, because now if you're getting an employee and you see that they've been using this service or EWA and you're starting to get more calls from them and they're panicked on the phone or whatever it may be, it may have maybe something to do with their usage pattern or the dependency on EWA. So look, EWA is definitely a game changer, but it comes with risk, right? So I know that there's this big push in a lot of industries for the employee experience, right? And to make sure that the employee is, you know, having a good time working there. And some companies think that EWA may impact that, right? And it very well may have some impact there, but it's not without any risk, especially to the employee. And if let's say the employer chose a service that does have high fees, right? Well, you know, and the employees decide to do it, and they're like, well, that kind of sucks. I wish that I didn't have to, that they had some other service. Then that may put a bad light on the employer, and then may trickle down and have some trickle down effects on employee retention and employee satisfaction or employee productivity, like we talked about earlier, right? So you want to be mindful of those things. EWA may one day be treated like payday advances or loans. So I, it's my worry, and this is maybe just a personal opinion when it comes to this, but there are some predatory um, companies and practices out there when it comes to loans and advances and payday loans and stuff like that. And so it's my worry that that may happen with EWA as well, right? Potentially, right? Because you may have a company that may have no limits on what they can offer you as far as your on demand or daily pay or EWA, but they may have some really crappy fees and may lack that transparency when it comes to fee structures and the impact that it may have to you, right? So
Mhm.
I think you definitely want to do your research and make sure that you're doing your due diligence when it comes to these things, because it can be detrimental to people if used wrong or incorrectly, right? So EWA can be a valuable tool
Mhm.
for enhancing employee financial wellness when it is implemented thoughtfully and responsibly, right?
Okay.
So, look, as a company or a payroll provider, if, let's say you're a decision maker and you would ultimately be the one who would champion having earned wage access for your company, be thoughtful, be mindful about it, right? You want to think about you know, the industry that you're in. You want to think about, um, you know, the audience that you serve or the people that you serve, right? Are there people that, are struggling? Are you in an industry that, is highly compensated? You do payroll for an industry that is highly compensated, right? So it may not, those people may not need EWA, they may not, you may put your efforts in a different direction or in another, on another topic, right? So you have to do that research as well and be mindful of that from a payroll professional and a company standpoint, because that matters as well. I'm trying to think of anything else that you should consider with earned wage access, right? Um, you want to put as much information out there as possible when it comes to educating the employees, because there's a big push. I know personally for me, I want to educate the employee and empower the employee as much as possible. So financial literacy is something that I'm a big believer in, and I believe that us educating our those that we serve and service is going to just help them understand their pay and how to manage it potentially. And I think even with this EWA, that we could do that as well, by putting out information, providing, making sure that if we do offer this service or our company elects to go with a service provider, that we give them as much information as possible. Maybe create a FAQ, or
Mhm.
make sure that if we have a secure drive somewhere, right, we can save those documents on the drive for employees or their managers to access that readily, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing our utmost to make sure that our employees are taken care of. And
A question came in. Are employees charged for using uh, earned wage access?
it depends, right? So we went about it over a little bit earlier. So there are some no cost options that are out
Uh-huh.
there. It depends on which state you're in, what service providers are available to you in your region. There very well may be a provider there that is not a cost, doesn't have any fees for the employee. You just have to do your research and find out what that may be, because each EWA provider is different.
And what state regulatory agencies are generally regulating this?
It's usually the Department of Labor or the Department of Revenue, from
Hmm.
what I am familiar with.
Hmm.
It's usually those folks that do that.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, thank you for everybody for coming here. Walt and Brian will be doing a payroll certification coming up in about 2 weeks. And so please come to that and we will give you 20% off. And the uh, I will post it right now. So thank you very much, Walt. Has always been great. And we will have you back, no doubt, soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye bye.